All right. For those of you who don't know me, I am Ethan Bogart. I'm a freshman here at Bluffton, and this may go on a little while. Believe it or not, I am not a professional writer, so it may drone on here or there. So, yeah, here it goes. When I heard that our youth group was going to Oklahoma, I was excited. I mean, I was nervous too, but I was excited. I've never. The reason I was nervous is because A, I'd never flown on a plane before, and B, I've never been further west than Fort Wayne, Indiana, so that was going to be something new for me. I wasn't too worried about the traveling west part, but I was slightly more concerned about flying. You always hear about plane crashes and things breaking off midair and engines catching on fire, but I knew it never happened, but it's just a constant thought that it could happen. It kept nagging at me the whole time. But long story short, we saw Air Force One take off from the airport. That was pretty cool. And we made it to Tulsa with nothing fell off that we're aware of. And when we got there and we got out of the airport and started walking around, my first analysis is that Oklahoma was a lot like Ohio, except it was hotter, there was weird grass, and there were more things that could potentially hurt me, like tarantulas or rattlesnakes. But we made it through the trip without any injuries, so that was not a problem. We got to our hotel, we stayed there, went sightseeing for a couple days. That was really fun. And then it came time to where we'd be staying the majority of our week. As we drove through the town, you could tell one day it was a very prosperous place. There were many buildings that you could tell were at one time very nice, but that was a long time ago. And that's where my problem began. I began to judge the people around us based on the buildings and their houses. Coming from a town like ours, I immediately began thinking about how ours is so much nicer and how I judged every home and business and school building and everything. I thought, wow, that's really not nice at all. Ours is so much nicer where we come from. And it took me a few days, but I realized how poorly I had misjudged the people in that town. I could not have been more wrong. When we arrived at the church we were staying at, we were pleasantly surprised that it was actually a newer church and something that I did not expect while packing. We had air conditioning, so I froze most nights. Didn't expect it to have air conditioning, so I only brought a sheet, and that was pretty cold. But we got settled in and met the leaders and other groups that were there, and that was that. But the next day we volunteered at various places around the town. My group, we were assigned to work at the school. And the elementary school was around the same age as ours here in Bluffton, but it was in pretty bad shape. We had to touch up paint, wipe down walls, change light bulbs, whatever else that might need to be done, pull staples out of the walls. And once again, I misjudged everyone based just off of the school. Most people couldn't control it, but I still judged them based off of the school. Like, it was just a building. It was very poor shape. I thought, everyone must be slobs. They don't care. And I thought, well, the maintenance staff here, they just be here for the paycheck. They're not doing anything. They don't take pride in it or anything. And that was also proved to be wrong. We were working with, his name was Daniel. He was a janitor at that school. And he was a very energetic person, to say the least. He kind of bounced around from task to task, sometimes forgetting to finish the task that was already at hand. But the first thing I noticed about Daniel, and later many people in the town, is that he's very prideful of what they had. He kept talking about how they're getting new floors in the classroom. He showed everyone, he made sure everyone saw they're getting a new turf football field put in, and he made sure everyone knew about that. He kept talking about that. He was very proud of it. And as the day went on and I kept talking to him, I pieced together that their school district was very poor. It took them 5 years to save up for new floors and maybe around 10 classrooms just in the elementary school. And they couldn't afford to have painters come in and paint the walls. That's why we had to touch it up. And if we touched it up, that's assuming we had the right color, which we always did not, or didn't always have the right color. But they were all very prideful of what they did have. He took pride in it. He looked past that, and he was glad they had what they did have. And then, the next day, we got moved to the soup kitchen for the rest of the week, and that turned out to be a blessing because we got to work in AC, and we got full cooked meals instead of packing lunches, which was very nice. And Although I had a significantly harder time working in the kitchen than I did doing manual labor at the school. That may be hard to believe. Again, at the soup kitchen, I had a very hard time not judging people. I'd never really seen people who were as unfortunate as them before, I guess, if that's the right word. And when Lori said that she strongly encouraged us to eat with them, I had a hard time with that. I will be honest, the first day, I just ate with Trey and went right back to the kitchen. We didn't sit down and eat with anyone else. But the next day, I managed to sit down and eat with someone at the town, although that was mainly from the scolding looks from Kylie and Sophie when I started to walk to an empty table. And then Trey joined me there, and we started talking to the man across from us. I don't remember what his name was. It was a while ago, like Sam or something. I don't know. But anyways, we were talking to him, and he ended up telling us, he's asking us about what sports we play, and he ended up telling us that he has 2 cousins or something. They both played in the NFL. He had 2 cousins who played in the NFL, and I was very glad that I talked to him. It was all really interesting what he had to say. I'm not sure how much of it was true, but it was interesting nevertheless. But yeah, and when I walked in there, I judged him completely wrong. I thought he'd be unfriendly, but he was the polar opposite of that. He would not stop talking. And, I mean, it was interesting, but I don't know if it was true. But it's interesting nevertheless. Now, it wasn't just the people in the town I misjudged. It was also the fellow youth groups that were there. To begin with, I actually misjudged them like they were all older than they looked. I thought there was a bunch of freshmen and sophomores there, and they were like all seniors or juniors. But and they all seemed not weird, but a little different from compared to people around here. And I'm sure that they thought we were a little odd too. Like I was later talking to my grandpa about the trip when I got back, and I told him there was one group there that was from Nebraska, and when I told him that, the first thing he said was, did they seem odd to you? We have friends who we go to Texas with, and they're from Nebraska, and they seem different too. But they're very nice people. That's just how they are. Where they're from, it's completely normal. It's just, we live pretty far away from each other. It's just different. But, and then, yeah, it's just normal where they were from, and he was right. Most of the kids there are very nice people. There was one kid who I could have sworn was the bully from A Christmas Story, but he claimed not to be. And then there was Jimmy. He was probably someone who was weird or different, even where he was from, but he was also probably the nicest person I've ever met. He came with a group of all girls, and surprise, surprise, I misjudged him as well. I thought he would be weird, and I wouldn't want to ever talk to him, but he was actually hilarious. I think more people than me miss him. When we left, he gave everyone hugs. He talked about how much he'd miss us. And he gave everyone hugs whether they'd want it or not. So I would say the trip taught me many things, but the number one overall important thing, be open-minded. Don't just walk away from something because you think it'll be boring or weird or just plain stupid. Give it a chance. I had judged so many people in that town as careless slobs, and that was completely unfair. You never have any idea what's going on in someone's life, so you shouldn't just make assumptions about it. And you especially need to respect the people and the things they're proud of, no matter how trashy, broke down, or just plain ugly something is. Because you need to remember, there's always someone who has it worse. Be prideful, respectful, and most importantly, be open-minded. Thank you.
I'm Bailey Edwards, and I'm a senior here at Bluffton. This was my 3rd mission trip. I just want to start off by thanking everyone for their prayers and support as we headed out to Oklahoma. I know we all really appreciated it. When we got there, I really had my mind set on working with kids. I liked kids, and I haven't had the chance to work with them on our previous trips. Lori asked me if I would rather work with kids or construction, and out of nowhere, construction came out of my mouth. I was really upset with myself because this was going to separate me from the rest of the girls, and I had my mind set on kids for so long. I ended up with Brian, Logan, Mason, Mick, and Nephi. We had 5 people from Nebraska along with us. Our first day, we helped an older lady named Lou. She was very strong in her beliefs, and she had donated to many places who then sold her name and address to others to send her mail. So we ripped her name off every piece of mail she could find for us just because she didn't want her identity to be stolen. I also helped her walk her dog, and we weeded forever, it felt like. The second day, we trimmed bushes, weeded, and painted a deck at a church. The lady that was in charge of the church's lawn took us to get ice cream. That was the day I ate 4 scoops of the best ice cream I have ever had. The other 2 days, we painted a house for a family. They were some of the nicest people I've ever met. A kid named Trey lived there. He was about my age, and he was so willing to help us, and he was always wanting to talk to us and get to know us. I've actually had the chance to continue to talk to Trey, and he's kept me updated on the house and his family, and he's became a really good friend. Throughout the week, we learned a lot about the Pawhuska community and the Osage tribe that is part of it. Pawhuska is a really small town, and everyone is so close. It reminded me of Bluffton, and it became my home away from home. On Thursday, we had a community cookout, and it was a really fun time. It's also a very sad time because this is our last time seeing some of the people. That was my last time seeing Trey, Kaylee's last time seeing Paige, and Jocelyn's last time seeing the little girls who absolutely adored her. These were all people that had taught us so much throughout our week, and it was just a really sad part of our week. Some of my favorite moments throughout the week were when Kaylee, Jocelyn, Dawn, and I left the group to take a bathroom break, and we got to see all the tarantulas, or in Spencer's case, tarantulas. Another one of my favorite parts was when we had the picnic. That was when I first started to talk to people from other places. Like Ethan said, they were a little different, but they were so sweet, and I've continued to talk to some of them. One of the main things I learned during this week was that I need to listen to my heart rather than my head. I think that was God's whole intention of having me randomly say construction, even though that's not what my head had in mind. If I would have listened to my head over my heart, I would never have the chance to see Lou's dedication to her belief and her love for the community. I never would have had the chance to get that amazing ice cream, and I wouldn't have met Trey, and more importantly, I wouldn't have learned that sometimes we have plans for ourselves, but ultimately God has a plan for us, even if it isn't the same as ours. I want to thank Lori, Dawn, and Brian for dealing with our early morning crankiness, our late night silliness, and just everything in the middle. We had lots of fun times together. There's a few emotional ones too. I want to thank Pastor Tim and all the parents who sent letters for us to read during the week. I know they all meant a lot to us as we were getting slightly homesick. Thank you to all the newbies who stepped up and jumped right in. I love seeing all of you grow this week. Some of the last people I want to thank are Nick, Mick, Mason, Logan, and Nephi. Even though I was the only girl, they never treated me differently, and they were so encouraging and just were always making sure I was doing all right, and yeah. Thank you guys. I don't think I would have been able to make it through the week of painting, weeding, and walking dogs without you guys. I'm so thankful I had the chance to go on this trip, and I can't thank everyone enough for their love and support.
Good morning, everyone. So my name is Braden Edwards. I graduated from Bluffton in 2018, and this was also my third mission trip. So starting out on this trip, I was kind of a late entry. One night, I walked downstairs, and my mom came up to me and said, "Would you have any interest in going on the mission trip this year?" And my first thought was no, not at all. But then I thought about it, and I knew it would make my mom happy, it would make Lori happy, and I knew I myself would be happy. So right before I found out about the trip, I got information that I had been accepted into the Grove Apprenticeship Program, the program I had been wanting to get into for multiple months. Starting the program, I had a probationary period for 90 days, and during these 90 days, I wouldn't be allowed to miss work, be late, or anything. But luckily, Grove gave me the week off, and I'm so thankful for it. Starting off the week, I was feeling like a champ. I had just graduated high school. I just got a new car. I got accepted in the program of Grove, and I just bought a puppy. So I felt like I was on top of the world. Going to Oklahoma was definitely a different experience because when I got there, I was in a group with mainly all younger people. because I wasn't sure how my leg would be able to do doing construction. My group was Lori, Sophie, Trey, Ethan, and Kylie, and myself. During the week, we worked at a school, cleaning hallways and classrooms, and just doing work there to help improve their school. While we were there, we met a nice guy named Daniel. Daniel was just a cool custodian, and he was one of the nicest and most prideful men I'd ever met. He cared about the school so much, and it showed. All the days after that, we started working at a Catholic church in the soup kitchen. The soup kitchen had a different group working every day, so we got to meet lots of different people in the community with lots of different backgrounds. Talking with the many community members was great because they all had their own unique story that they could tell you about the area and if they could tell you about themselves. For instance, I talked to a guy whose daughter's knee surgeon was the same surgeon that did surgery on Bo Jackson. Going back to what I was saying in the beginning about me feeling like a hotshot, this week was extremely humbling. Like I said, working with the younger kids, I thought I'd be more of a leader and they would be learning a lot from me. But throughout the week, I learned something special from all of them. Trey, you taught me that it doesn't matter how fast you work, it's about how good of a job you do. Sophie, I learned that a contagious smile can change so many people's days. Kylie, I learned that no matter how uncomfortable the situation may seem, if you go and do it and have fun with it, it'll turn out. Ethan, I learned that no matter how little experience you have or how young you are, you can always step up and be a leader. And Lori, I learned that no matter how hard times may seem, it's all about attitude. If you want to push through it, you'll get through it. So I want to thank you all for helping me to remember to stay humble by showing me I still have a lot to learn. Thank you.
Is this on? Yeah? Okay, sweet. Hi, my name's Nephi. If you guys don't know me, I normally don't go to this church. I am a Mormon, actually. I go to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Lima. And one night, it was like 12:30 or something. I don't even know why I was up, but it was summer. I got a phone call from Mick, and I was like, hey, yo, what up? And he was like, hey. And I was like, what do you want? It's 12:30. He was like, you want to go on a mission trip? I was like, yeah. Like, I didn't even think about it. I just said, yeah. I was like, sure. Haven't asked my mom, haven't cleared it with anybody, but I just said, yeah. And he was like, all right, sweet. I'll give you details later. Good night. And that was literally the conversation. That was all it was. So then in the morning, I was like, all right, I just said I was going on a mission trip to Oklahoma without asking my mom, without telling my dad. I'm going to be in so much trouble. And I kind of was. But it's all right. We handled it all out. It was nice. I got to go. So to start it out, we went to the airport, flew on the plane, did our thingies that we had to do. And then we got to Tulsa, and we got to like the hotel and everything, and that was nice. One of the mornings, Mick and I got up, got a quick little workout in. That was nice. And then, we got some breakfast and went sightseeing, and, it was just really cool and fun. And then the Sunday there in Tulsa, or it was like somewhere right outside of Tulsa or something like that, we went to a church service, a Father's Day church service, and it was really nice. The thing with this church and my church, the services are a lot different. So going in, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to feel about this because it's nothing like my church. But I went in, and the church service was amazing. I couldn't ask for any better of a church service. And I feel like that's what everybody could say about it. It was just so amazing, and so it felt like we were meant to be there. And we got to meet a whole lot of new people there and everything, and it was just really nice. So then we went to that, and then later that evening, or somewhere I don't know, one of those days we went to a balloon festival, and that was really cool. It was really, really hot, but it was really cool. And the one moment I had there was Ethan and we were just kind of going to walk around and, see stuff, and we saw a helicopter. So we were like, hey, let's go check this helicopter out. So we went to go check it out, and then they're like, yeah, it's like $40 per person to have it get on it. And we're like, yep, nope, all right, we're gone. So we just continued to walk around, and we were going, and then this one guy stopped us, and he was like, hey. And I was like, hey. And he was like, I like your shirt. And I was like, thanks, I like it too. Like, it's really cool. And he was like, oh, what church are you guys with? And I was like, well, Ethan, he goes to the First United Methodist Church, and I am a Mormon. And as soon as I said that, he started bashing me. Just everything about me. He just started saying hateful words and everything about my religion. And I didn't let him do it, but I wasn't like snotty about it, and I didn't like say, hey, you're wrong. Like, don't say that ever again, or, bad things are going to happen. But like, that was a real test for me, because for someone to say that, it kind of hurt my feelings a little bit. But I grew from it, knowing that, hey, I'm one of the only people in my religion here. Like, I got to be stronger than I've ever had before, or else I'm going to get broken down and just bad things are going to happen. So then that happened, and he like baptized us or something, and like cured my diabetes apparently, and all of that, and it was just a hot mess. But it happened, so oh well. So then we got to Pahuska, and like the speakers before me said, it was kind of a rundown place. Like, we kind of got there, and we were like, oh, okay, like, we'll see what we can make out of this. And the first day, in my group, we got to help this lady, Miss Lou. And like Bailey said, we took all her mail, ripped her name off of it because she doesn't want her identity stolen, put them into different piles. And that actually got done pretty quickly, which was kind of cool. So then we went to go weed and do all this stuff, and we made it really nice and pretty, and she was really happy about that, and we got to walk the dog, and it was just super nice. And then we went to the one church to paint and trim the bushes and everything. And then after that, for the next two days, I think, something like that, we went to this one lady's house. I believe her name was Charity or something like that. And we had to scrape the paint off and paint her house because she wanted to paint it. So we painted it. Well, painted one side of the wall, which was pretty good for 2 days. Yeah. And so we did that, and you could just see that she's very thankful. And her son Trey, the first day he came in, pulled in with his car, gave us a little wave and went inside. But then the next day, it felt like Trey was with us the whole time. He loved us being there, and he actually said to us, he was like, you guys are the coolest group that I've ever been with. Like, I'm going to be so sad when you guys leave. And yeah, it was sad, but it was just really nice to make a bond with those people and to continue to keep talking to them and how they're doing. And then the day before the last day, when we were to leave, we had a cookout, and everybody that we helped was invited, and the whole community was invited, and there was a really good turnout. And Braden and I were the master chefs. So we did 80 burgers or something like that, 20, 40 hot dogs, something like that. Oh, it was hot, it was cool, but it was good. I don't know, we did something, and those burgers were good. But, and I mean, that's what everybody else said, so I guess we're master chefs or something like that. I don't know. And so that was really fun, and it was really fun to spend time with people not only in different religions and different aspects of everywhere, because we had people from Nebraska, we had people from Ohio, we had people from somewhere in that area. You know, we had people from everywhere, it seemed like. And it was just really cool to see their perspective and to see what they thought and how they were kind to me and kind to everybody else in our group, and that we all had respect for each other. It was really nice. And a big thing was for me that, yeah, I might not go to this church and might not have same beliefs as everybody, but the night before last, like after cookout and everything, when we all got together, it was really the most spiritual night, and it was nice to see how, even though we all come from different religions and we all have different circumstances and everything, that everybody could just be there and feel the Holy Spirit and be overcome with that power. And just emotions were everywhere that night. And it was really nice and crazy to just see all that. And like, I saw Lori, and she was just over there smiling while we were just bawling our eyes out. And she was like, I'm not smiling because I'm making fun of you. But she said that she was smiling because that moment was a great moment, and she was glad to see that we could feel that and experience that. And I truly think that was amazing. And I'm so glad that I said yes to Mick at 12:30 and that I was able to go on the mission trip. I've been truly blessed from it, and it was just an amazing trip. I rated it a nice 10 out of 10. And yeah, that was the mission trip.
Hi, I'm Jocelyn. Before going into the mission trip, I really did not want to go. I'm not a person that really likes to go away from home, so being away from home for a week in a place where I wasn't comfortable at all was not something I was interested in. Throughout the week, many things changed my mind about not wanting to go. My job for the week was to work in a healthy kids camp. It's a free day camp for anyone ages 5 and up. I saw many things that you wouldn't see back in a small town like Bluffton. I was nervous to talk to some of the kids because I wasn't sure what to say and didn't want to say the wrong thing and offend them, because a few of them were at the camp were part of a tribe. I met a little girl named Shanta, and she really changed the whole trip for me. I created a very close bond with her and her siblings. When I was talking to her daily throughout the trip, I was listening to her stories. I found out that her mom was addicted to pain medicine. She let that control her life and the way she treated her children. We were at the cookout at the end of the week where we invited everyone we worked with that week. The kids had to leave early because their mom needed her medicine. She started to act different and began to get very tired and angry. She ended up having to leave shortly after. Saying goodbye to her and her siblings was the hardest thing on the whole trip for me. All of us were crying, and it was so hard to say goodbye, not knowing if she would be safe anymore. I still talk to her mom and keep in touch with the kids. Shanta touched my life in ways that are unexplainable, and I'm so glad that I met her and was able to get to know her and many other people in Oklahoma. I'm so thankful that I got the opportunity to come on this trip.
Hi, I'm Lauren Rhodes, and I'm a sophomore at Bluffton High School. And the beginning of the missions trip, before I went, did not go as expected. And the day before I left, I spent all afternoon outside working on a project for school. And by the time I woke up the next morning, I was completely covered in poison ivy. All over my back, my arms, and some on my face. It was just not good. And I knew I was going to have to go to the doctor and get a shot. And I hate shots. It's the worst. So you can believe how my morning felt. And it's awful. Even though the week started off a little rough, I completely forgot about how bad it went because I realized I had to put my problems aside and focus on the work I was going to be doing. The missions trip that I went on was the second one I've been with on our youth group, and it was my favorite one so far. I absolutely love the people I went with this week, and I became so much closer with the newer youth and the youth I've been with in the past year. During the week, my group leader was Dawn, and I was with Jocelyn, Maddie, Kaylee, and myself. Most of the week we spent at a child's daycare from kids ages 5 to 12. They would stay there all day, every day during the summer, and I know me, I would get so bored going every day. So I tried to make it as fun as possible as I could for the kids. One of the last days, a child was running when he slipped and he cracked his head open. And that was really scary. And thankfully Dawn was there because she knows what to do. And let me tell you, it's not easy keeping 40-some kids away from a mess like that. It was hard, and we even set up cones, so it was like crime scene, and they could not pass the cones. So, yeah. And after a day, the kid came back, and he was so happy to see all of his friends again, and they talked about how cool of a scar he'll have, and all that kind of stuff. I think being there for the kids was one of the best things we could have given them because they don't get that kind of attention at home. And I was glad that we spent that day with the kids so that way they could get some kind of attention and they felt special. For example, one day I saw a little 5-year-old boy who's sitting by himself, and I hadn't seen him talk to anyone the whole week. So I walked over there and I asked him if he wanted to play. And when I walked over, I noticed that he had rashes and scars all over his legs and arms. And I sat down, asked him if he wanted to play. He said no. He shook his head, and he was embarrassed by his scars when he tried to cover them. And I lifted up my long sleeve, because that's what I had to wear with my poison ivy, and I lifted up my long sleeve, and I showed him my rashes, and his face lit up, and he felt so special because he knew that he wasn't alone. And that really hit me because I was like, that just made my week because I knew I made a kid feel like he was important, and that's what he was to me. And that was the best part of my week because I got to see that shy boy come out of his shell, get comfortable, and start talking to other kids. And I still pray for him and that he's safe and that everything's better now. And that week I felt like we made a lot of kids happy as a group, and that was my goal walking into our project because happiness is one of the best things we can be given as a child. And I feel like Lori, my dad, and Dawn did that to us as a youth group. And I just want to thank all of them for blessing us that week.
Hello, everyone. Most of you know me, Logan Rhodes. I'm a senior, and this was my 4th missions trip. Before going on this trip, I had no drive to go on another. As some of you know, I absolutely hated the missions trip 2 years ago. Just ask Lori. I shied away from God following that trip because I felt that he had put me in a situation that I could not succeed. I was angry at him for that, and it wasn't long before Lori was sending me texts about the next trip. Believe me, I fought my mom tooth and nail to be done, to not have to go on that trip. It was an uphill battle for me the whole way. Until then, Lori started texting me, asking me why I didn't want to go. I didn't know what to say, and at that point I knew I was going on the trip. I was not happy about it. I even had some friends going this year, but I kept thinking it was just going to be a rerun from the year before. And I was still so angry with my mom. It wasn't until I got on the plane to leave before I finally decided to put my faith in God for the week. And from that point, he took control and made it a great week. After we got to the mission site in Oklahoma, we were separated into groups. Bailey, Mason, Mick, Nephi, and I all ended up in the same group somehow. And let me tell you, I wouldn't want anyone else to paint a house somewhere in Oklahoma in the dead of summer with. The house we were working on had recently been purchased by a new owner, and you could tell it had not been taken care of prior, as most of the paint was chipping off and there were more external issues with the house. So our job was to repaint an entire side of one house and half of another. It was pretty hot when we were working, and you'd think we'd have some people complaining. But we didn't have any of that. Everyone in the group kept chugging along, putting in a bunch of work on the house. That's including the other members in our group that were from a different church. The other members were from a Catholic church, and let me tell you, I had some preconsidered notions. I was like, this is going to be bad. They're going to look at us differently because their religion is very strict and stuff like that. But it was the opposite. It was the opposite. They were super social with us, and it was so easy to start a conversation with them, which makes the week go by faster because you can talk to people that you've never met before, and we can learn about like where they're from and stuff like that. And even with this awesome work group that I had, this missions trip tested my faith more than the previous 3 I had been on. I grew a lot in my faith by forcing myself to do things I had never done before on this trip. One of the things was praying for certain members on the trip, on the final night. For anybody who's been on a missions trip knows the final night's a foot washing night, and there's nothing glorious about washing feet. And you wouldn't think it would be emotional, but really it is. Braden and I had been asked on previous trips to pray, but we had said no. We weren't ready. For whatever reason that was, we weren't ready. But as being the oldest on the trip, we felt that we were finally ready to do it, and we took on that challenge, and I'd say we did a pretty good job. Looking back on the trip, one theme, a before and after. Whether that be all the first-year kids growing on their first trip, or the house before and after we repainted it. There's no denying that the work we did was great for the community. But the reason I was on the trip was for God to rekindle my faith in Him. As I had said earlier, I was upset with God, and I had pushed Him away. He knew that. He knew I had to come back for another trip to understand His goal for me. Looking back on the trip, at the before and after, I'm glad I went. And I'd just like to shout out a couple people. I'd like to shout out Braden Edwards for coming on the trip with me this year, because I know he was a late arrival. And I'm glad Mason got to go on the trip too, as he's my buddy, my pal. But there's something between me and Braden as like we went on our first missions trip together, and it's just like you can't replace something like that. And when we were washing feet, when we were done and we were praying for each other, there's just like a bond that I just don't share with many other people. So thank you, Braden.